we will be talking about trim, and specifically custom trim, on the fascia of the roof. So when we make a custom piece of trim, there's lots of different factors that we can draw in there, but the most common one is the shape of the trim. And with that comes a couple of issues where we have to keep in mind, namely the insertion point of the trim profile that we make, as well as the orientation of that profile. So the trim, this is a piece of trim, just standard wood exterior 6x1 that you'll typically see on a fascia. If I take a look at it in the object viewer, it is just an extruded rectangle. If I look at it straight on, it's just an extruded rectangle on the roof. And so sometimes we need a custom shape. So a common request is a drip edge of a piece of trim. And so if we want that profile of a drip edge, we first need to draw it. So to draw it, we need to draw a closed polyline. So I'll just run the polyline command and start to draw the profile that I want. I'm going to make it 6 inches, not 60 inches. What do you want to do? 6 inches by 1 inch, and then I'll go this way, 5 inches, up 1, and down 2. So we have a closed polyline with the type of drip edge that I want to see on my roof. So if I want to make that into a trim, the first step I need to do is convert that closed polyline into a profile. So I select the polyline, right mouse click, and I select convert to profile definition. Then it asks for an add ring, or the default is the insertion point. If I wanted to add rings, I could, but I don't want to. Typically a piece of trim, I just want the insertion point. So I'll select this bottom left point right here for my insertion point, and it asks if in the command line if it's new or an existing profile, and I'll tell it it's new, and I'll call this drip edge because it's just brand new, and that's the type of shape that I want it to be. So now we have a profile of this polyline saved in the system. So now we actually need to make this profile into a trim. And so what I'll do is I'll go to my Manage tab, and I'll go to my Style Manager. I'll go to the VisionREZ part, and then I'll go to the VisionREZ trim styles. And so these are the trim styles that I have in my drawing, and I want to make a new one. I could right mouse click and say new, but the better way to do it is to take something that's already existing and convert that into a new trim. So I like to start with the wood exterior. I copy it and paste it, and it makes a wood exterior too. And then from there I can rename that, say I want that to be wood-drip edge. And it took all the settings from the wood exterior trim and made that into the wood-drip edge. If I select this one right here, I can change the some of the features of it. I have in the general tab, I have its name. In the design rules, it was taking it from the wood exterior, so it was using that rectangular shape that we saw earlier. But instead of that rectangular shape, I can pick out some predefined shapes, or I can click this Use Profile and use any of the profiles that exist inside my drawing. And since we made a drip edge profile, that's there to select. This floating parameters view is just to see exactly what you actually drew. So if I want to show it 6x2 and click this button, I can actually see that work. You can see that that's not quite right. I had the little 1-inch piece down here, and so this isn't exactly the view I want. What I actually do is transpose these two values, 6 inches there, 2 inches there, and now if I look at it, that looks about right. So now I have a piece of a trim style defined for my drip edge, and you can set standard styles. I can delete all these, and if I look back, I had a 6-inch width, 2-inch height, and so I can say typical 6 inch by 2. Okay, so that's the standard one. You don't really have to do that. And you can set the materials, no rule classifications, and we'll keep the display properties as is. So I'll select apply to save my trim style. And now maintaining in my style manager, I can actually go into the roof style that I was actually using. So the 1x6 fascia styles, 1x6, and still has all these calculated items, how the tail cut's treated. And I have my eave trim, and so from here I can change the actual eave trim. And so instead of using the wood exterior, I can use my new wood drip edge, and it is 6 inches wide, 6 inches tall there. But instead of 1 inch, the total width of my new trim is actually 2 inches, because that little bump out is actually 2. And that's an important factor to remember, is what the total extent of your trim is. And if you get that a little off, we'll show in the when we make a custom freeze style that you do need to be very accurate about those numbers. And so just on the eave, I'm going to change that from 6 to 2, and as well I'll go on the rake side and do the same thing of changing my wood exterior, making that 2 inches wide, and I can select OK. Now you can see that instead of a single rectangle like I have in my freeze, I have 3 lines here, and that's actually my new trim. If I take a look at this, just one corner of my object viewer, you can see now it's using that trim with that little bump out there. The lamb's leg treats it a little differently, where it goes all the way down and kind of includes that in there. You'd have to custom kind of modify that, or use a subtract modifier on that trim if you wanted to cut that little piece out. But you can see that I have a nice drip edge custom trim style on my fascia. Now, one of the important points that I didn't talk about too much is what the actual insertion point and rotation needs to be. And sometimes you'll mess that up, but typically if you think of it as a coordinate when you're drawing your trim, if this is an XY plane, that you want your trim to lay down with the insertion point at 0, 0 there, and this is going to be the top side and the bottom side. And so if you need to rotate it, sometimes you get that a little messed up and your trim comes out funny. So as an example, I'll actually change this trim. I'll copy this polyline to the side, and if I rotate it or if I mirrored it like so, and it was facing a little different way and what have you, I can actually change my existing profile. I'll say that's my insertion point and it's existing, and I'll select that as my drip edge. So now if I take a look at my roof, it's all messed up. My trim is peeking out of there, it's going through, and these are the common things you'll see when you're when it's not quite the profile, the orientation or the insertion point. It's actually upside down and rotated wrong. And so these are the things that you'll see if you actually get the orientation off or the insertion point off. So make sure that if you think about it in XY coordinate, it's in the positive XY, your insertion point is at 0, 0, the top goes in the Y direction, the bottom goes in the X direction. So if I want to change this back, I'll just say convert to profile definition, select my insertion point there, it's existing, it's that drip edge, OK, and now the trim is back to the way I had it before. So that changes dynamically, and you don't have to delete and redo your roof, you just have to redefine your profile.